Okay, so from today, from the Ed of Ed, I thought I'd take a bit of a breather from the Monroe CST8 fully automatic electromechanical calculator and work on the Model K that I introduced quite some episodes ago. And just basically it was a take apart and show it in all its cruddy glory. And I've been kind of itching to kind of work on this guy because it's a nice beginner's project, and it's really probably what I should have started on, begin with, kind of get the ropes of the mechanical calculator world and so forth. So I thought I'd just, for the moment here, kind of take this thing apart a little bit and clean it up some, and kind of go from there. I guess one of the things that's kind of interesting is you work on these guys and you start looking at things in a little bit more detail, you realize that this machine has actually had a bit more of a rough life than I thought it did. It probably doesn't pick up in the camera, and I'll probably show it later, but this guy's been braced together. His frame has been broken at some point where there's obviously a higher stress point. There's a brazing job here, a brazing job underneath this gear you probably can't see. I guess you can see some brass there, braze, and then there's a brazing job there. So this guy, the casting broke at some point, and I assume it probably broke after it came out of the factory. The fellow, like I say, in the cleaning or the revealed video of how dirty it was a fellow that definitely didn't throw things away, and definitely was very Scotch, as it were, in his not spending a nickel more than necessary and keeping a hold of everything. So I wouldn't doubt that at some point or other this guy had some kind of severe catastrophe, and he took it to his shop and brazed it back together, I'm guessing. The other thought is maybe there's a weakness in the original Monroe castings at the factory, and it just snapped there, because it looks like cast iron anyways. It could be steel, but I think it's very likely it could be cast iron, and you have some definitely where it's broken there, it's a stress point. So it'd be interesting to know if maybe this thing was taken apart at one point for some general repairs and it was broken or something. I don't know. It's quite a dramatic little repair job there. So it'll be interesting to see how well this guy actually works. Right now it is quite jammed, and I haven't really tried doing anything with it. It's just so hopelessly jammed. So I think what I'll first do is I will see if I can get the carriage off, and then I'm going to try and take the keyboard off. And I think it's really as simple as undo a couple screws here, and it might be undo one side or the other. And by the way, in case you're new to this thing it's basically hinged, and it slides back and forth on this slide here. And the big thing is I have to take the carriage off with this long rod, and then there's some springs in there which I got to be kind of careful that I don't looks like they are actually kind of interesting how they work. I'm not sure. They're just because they don't appear to actually cause the thing to torque up or down, and they might be just more of a kind of a snubber, because they don't appear to lift or lower it or do any sort of holding load. Let's see if I can get it off maybe on this side first. It's probably one of those tricks that I should probably read or research first before doing anything further, perhaps. Okay, looks like it comes off just fine from this direction. Okay, so I got the one screw here. That's the other thing, of course, is don't lose the irreplaceable fasteners, because a lot of these earlier machines are using thread pitch standards that are not common anymore. And getting replacement screws could be a challenge. It looks like it's coming off just fine. The spring fell off, of course. That came off just fine. And there it is. So there's this guy. It's actually, pretty nice actually looking inside. I mean, those wheels don't look discolored, and I think probably just a good cleaning, and this thing might work fine. It's interesting, this thing's a casting. I thought it was a sheet metal stamping, but it's actually a casting, and just based off of how lightweight this guy is, it's probably it's got to be aluminum. It's not steel. It's interesting. It got the serial number over here on this end. It's let's see here, 113 3924, it looks like. So it'll be interesting to see if I can see that same number elsewhere, and parts haven't been swapped around. But, you know, my guess is I can probably clean this up without really too much trouble. It's interesting also, by the way, how this thing is moved back and forth. It's just this very large, kind of crude rack and pinion, kind of a gear here. And then, and then it goes to this kind of an interesting little guy here that does the little turning, which looks like it's colliding with this one gear. It's okay. It's maybe okay. It's because I have the handle off, and that apparently limits it to a position there. So I guess it normally would sit there. It's interesting to note. Okay, and then I got these two springs, and one was longer than the other, and hopefully I can. The short one was on the inside of the frame, and the short one was sitting, I believe. Let's see, I think it was on. Well, anyhow, so I'll have to look at the video. I got a spring here and a spring here. The video camera. Spring was sitting over here. Spring, I believe, was sitting on this side. Maybe it was sitting. I think it was sitting on this side. Okay, so there's that. And I got two springs and a screw. And then the screw. It's interesting, actually. There's a screw on this side, but it's the same diameter as the shaft. I was about ready to remove that one. Actually, maybe it is not. Maybe that's actually part of it. It certainly looks like it's a screw because it got a little groove on it. But that might actually be the shaft itself. It just has a slot on it. Anyhow, so this side has a shoulder. That obviously goes into that casting, and it captures it on that one side. That almost certainly makes more sense. Okay. It's all new to me. Okay, so I think from here I'm going to take the keyboard off, and if I understand this right, it's just 4 screws, and this keyboard should just come right out. Hopefully. Fairly long screw there. Looks like it's just simply 4 screws. That's one thing I've noticed about these calculators so far. I've been really lucky is they're not like rusted solid to the point where you can't undo screws. Those 2 screws are the same length on that side. Always a good idea to try and note these things because, you know, once you cut it apart, it could be kind of a 3-dimensional jigsaw puzzle to put back together again. Okay, so it looks like so far they're all the same length. I've got one more to go, and I think this keyboard will simply, hopefully, just come straight out. It's kind of fun to take things apart because you don't have to actually worry about the details of them going back together again, right? So it can be more fun, but of course, then the reckoning comes that you actually have to put it back together again. It doesn't want to come apart just yet. I was under the impression that this keyboard does come out on its own as a unit. But I might be wrong. What else is holding this guy in? It wants to come off a little, wants to travel a little bit on that side. Looks like there is a screw that's holding this little green plate down. It looks like this little screw here, interestingly enough, is holding that on, and then I'm not entirely sure. I may have to remove these buttons. I was kind of hoping I didn't have to. How can I take care of that out? This guy almost looks like he could come out with just shifting it back and forth. This one's the only one's really holding it in place is this guy here. He's got our pin. Either that or I risk taking those keycaps off, which, you know, I have my handy dandy keycap remover, so I could do that. Looks like that's going to require a much finer blade screwdriver. And I'm guessing this one's going to be much too light. Maybe this might work. It's next to the big button here, which of course is too big for my that might take a bit more to work on, so I'll come back with maybe a bit better screwdriver and I'll be right back. Okay, so I got myself a much better screwdriver, and by the way, this might be a time to mention, you know, your common everyday screwdriver sets, you know, you get a few at the hardware store, Harbor Freight or something like that, and the blade size inevitably isn't the right size, and so the ideal thing is to get a really nice screwdriver set here that has a bunch of graduated bits, so you just keep systematically looking until you find the right size bit, and you get the bit that is close to matching that the blade size as the screw head needs, because you get one shot at this and you just strip it and you basically got a ruined screw head, and then what are you going to do with this thing? And I think in this case I might have bought that clear back in the day when Radio Shack was doing like Tech America or something like that, and you could go to these, what was basically a super duper sized Radio Shack in the day. When I was thinking about doing this calculator stuff, I was researching buying a gun screwdriver set. I guess you can go to like a gun shop or tool supply place, and they have gun screwdriver kits that are like really good quality ground with lots of fine graduated different size tips and everything, but they're kind of expensive, and I think you can probably go to maybe your better home improvement store or hardware store and maybe pick up a better toolbox screwdriver set like I got there. Okay, I got this one screw out, and I'm hoping that this thing will now come out. And now I am still mystified as to why this guy doesn't want to come out. Oh, he is coming out. Okay, he has come. He's just been in there a long time. Okay, so I might have to undo 3 of those K-caps, which of course the one I don't have the size on my pulling mechanism. This one I might be able to, if I pop this one out, I might be able to leave. Oh, no. Guess I don't have to worry about undoing that one. It's a volunteer. Okay, maybe the other ones will come out easily. Uh-oh. Maybe they aren't in that as hard as I thought. I thought the keycap puller was pretty impressive. Maybe they're just not in there that tight. Interesting. Or this has been taken apart before. It looks like it certainly has, so it could be these keycaps are kind of worn. You certainly hope they're normally in there really that tight, because otherwise my puller mechanism isn't as impressive as I thought, right? So here this guy comes off, and it's, you know, if you've been looking at the Monroe CST8 calculator video project, this looks to be just a giant older version of that same technology. They just managed to shrink it down a bit, and this is a bushing off of that guy here, and I believe it goes in that way. And that is that guy. So, and I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to clean this guy. Maybe it goes the other way. Actually, it does go this way. It goes underneath this plate. If you haven't noticed. Okay, and it keeps that from torquing and everything else. Interesting. So this guy, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to clean it. The CST8, I was kind of nutty and used ultrasonic and water. I think this guy, I might actually seriously take all the keycaps off. I mean, that they're so easy to take off after all. And I got a nice machine that'll do it. And then I don't have to worry about damaging these guys, and I can ultrasonically clean those in water, all right, and with soap and water. And then the rest of this guy, I'll test to make certain the paint isn't distressed any by my rather mild cleaning solution in my old parts tank of diesel fuel and kerosene, but my guess is that this paint will hold up just fine with that, in which case I think I can probably clean this guy up with that means, and it'll come up, I think, hopefully a lot better than it is right now, which is pretty gross. It's amazing how simple this thing is and how much you can boil it down by. And there you can see those breaks in this weld, this part. I mean, it broke there, and it goes down there. So it looks like this whole chunk here popped off at some point. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what happened to this guy and how aligned it is. It seems like everything seems to otherwise turn nicely. And it's interesting now that I have the keyboard off. It wants to turn now. It wasn't willing to turn before. It seemed like, or maybe it did turn a little bit. Okay. Well, it's certainly more free than it seemed earlier. Interesting. Yeah. So, it may not really need the parts cleaner, but I might just do it anyways because it would be kind of nice to clean this guy up a little bit. I'm hoping that all it takes is just a, cleaning, get the gross off, lubricate everything, and I'm hoping this thing will run just fine because there's so little here to go wrong. I mean, there's certainly nothing particularly automatic about this guy. I guess there might be some detection of overflow, underflow, and that has something to do with this bell and some of these little parts. And I think that's kind of it. This guy is really super simple. So I guess that's my next show here is to parts cleaner this guy without losing any parts here, and then how do I get that guy back in this? Oh, there you go. Okay, this guy goes in this slot here. Sometimes these videos anymore are more for my own backup sake, if anything, because then I can go back, look at this, and I got some kind of record. So even if I didn't wind up doing YouTube videos, it probably makes sense to do this. And it's kind of one of those things where you have these fun projects, and unless you have a friend over for the day or something like that to show them this stuff, did this ever exist? It's kind of like the tree in the forest. Did it make any noise? So it's kind of nice to at least share this sort of stuff, even if the audience is small and so forth. That a few technological enthusiasts such as myself get something out of it, out of the experience beyond just my one little experience. And maybe this will be of some value to some other beginners. So anyways, off to the cleaning of this guy, and hopefully maybe when you come back here, this thing will be somewhat cleaner and less gross. Okay, so the big decision here is, do I pull all these keycaps off or not for this guy? And I think, I got this puller, and they seem to come off, pretty reasonably well. I think I will go ahead and do so. So, let's see here. That one definitely came up with some force. There's so much crud underneath these things that so miracle of high-speed space-time. We'll speed this up a bit. That one really took a lot of force. Okay, I'd have to say that the keyboard button puller mechanism was well worth design and printing, because half of those came off without too much trouble. Some of them really came off so hard I was worried I was going to break the device, and it's already pretty beat up just from one machine. But hey, it only takes a few minutes to print, and what can I say? It costs nothing. One of those freebies on FreeCAD, or not FreeCAD, Thingiverse. So print one out. You can go to your local public libraries anymore. It seems like they have 3D printers if you don't even want to buy one, and they only cost like $300, so it's well worth it. So yes, I'll see if I can clean this guy out next. Quite a pile of keycaps too, by the way. Okay, one big pile of keycaps later. I do notice that on some of them they apparently did have troubles with them staying put, and they put little bits of paper in, maybe glue. Others I don't think were ever disturbed, or at least they certainly didn't want to come out very readily. The red ones were especially difficult. I believe I'm missing one keycap in the whole thing. I can't remember. I think that was a red, or was it a 9? I can't remember. It's on a corner. Like I say, some of them they've wedged bits of paper in to hold them in place, so I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do about those. And of course I got a 3D print replacement as close as it can anyways, whichever one that is. So I guess next thing I will do is see if I can ultrasonically clean these guys and maybe hand scrub them or something like that and get those numbers to show back up without the paint being damaged. And then I gotta put all these guys back on again. Hopefully I'll get them to stay put without using glue or paper. I'm not sure what I'll do for the ones that are obviously difficult. Maybe some double-sided tape might work better than kind of jamming them in with that. And some of these, it's a dark material, and they're like, maybe they tried some sort of adhesive. I don't know if that would have been factory, because it looks like, at least on the white one that had the tape, it didn't. This white one doesn't even have anything in it, so I'm guessing some of them came off for some reason over the decades, and they had to tape them back on. Maybe the machine had to be taken apart completely at one point, but I don't see why they would needed to have taken the keycaps themselves off, because the keyboard itself, there's really no reason to take the keycaps off to do any of the maintenance on the thing, unless they had to replace a spring in the keyboard itself, and that seems unlikely. Those, I can't imagine those failing, but I guess they could have. Anyhow, just daily life, banging away and everything. I suppose those keycaps came off, so into the ultrasonic they go. Just as a quick little observation here, it does look like this guy's been probably taken apart and worked on, insofar as it looks like they were kind of concerned with the order of things. They've handwritten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess I don't see markings on there, but I don't know if they thought these needed to be matched or not. It is kind of interesting how they look like they're stamped sheet metal parts on the Lisbon split gears, I think they're called. Actually, I've always called them split gears, but looks like they're stampings, multiple plates that have been cut. It's interesting how they did this, because each of these gears are one little 1/8 inch plate that they've kind of continued to sandwich on to get the next gear up. Once it's cleaned up, it might be a little more obvious. And that plate, each plate adds an extra tooth. It's interesting how they built that. I thought that was kind of neat. And then on the underside, kind of a question comes to mind, is this, see if I can get that in front of the camera here. I do notice this little feature here. I don't know if that's factory or not. They got this spring here. It's on just this piece of wire that's hooked over this end here. Interesting to know if the folks know if that's normal or not. Looks like it hooks onto a part that certainly has been there before. So I assume that's probably a factory thing. You think they would have designed that more integral to begin with than this piece of wire in here, but maybe that's how they normally did it. So I guess that's only 2 observations before it goes to take a bath here. And we'll see what it looks like. Hopefully it looks a lot better than this and it works. I don't lose anything in the process. I think I I might carefully blow it off a little bit of compressed air, ballistically trajectorying things off into oblivion, and then give it a bath so I don't put quite so much stuff in my parts cleaner. So anyways, I'll come back in a bit. Okay, so now for some ultrasonic cleaning here. We'll see how cruddy this gets. Well, bit of cleaning later, and it looks quite a bit better. The frame chassis came out, I think, pretty good. The keyboard, on the other hand, I had to do a lot of scrubbing and cleaning in the gaps here, and there was a lot of spots where there's kind of this black tar-like material, and with the solvents in the cleaning tank, it didn't seem to bother it at all. But when I went to do a secondary cleaning with just a little bit of alcohol, dabbing in on a brush and so forth, it seemed to the alcohol itself seemed to kind of soften the paint a little bit. So it kind of took the finish and kind of ruined it a little bit there. It's not quite as maybe glossy as it might have been originally. But I think it'll do. It got thin enough to where it actually did get through the paint in a spot where I was trying to rub some of this black mystery tar off. It wouldn't come off. Getting out of these grooves and cracks and everything along this frame was a problem too. And this one screw is missing here, so I had to kind of bend everything back into place. And I might try and find a screw that might fit that. I might have to tap it to like a 632. Otherwise, I guess it came out okay. I think the thing that's kind of the most kind of a bummer here is when I went to clean the carriage here, I only used alcohol, denatured alcohol, and I thought, well, that'll surely be safe enough. But I think it actually kind of ruined the finish on the white surfaces here a little bit, and might have washed out the paint a little bit. I don't think they're as shiny as they could have been or would have been. I was trying to be really careful, and I thought that would surely be safe enough, because this is probably an oil-based paint, and the alcohol you wouldn't think would touch it at all, but it seems to have probably distressed these surfaces, and they're still pretty dirty. I haven't really dared to go a whole lot further. I might try a little bit of soap and water, but I think it's kind of those, you can be too carrying on it, it'll become careworn, and so I guess I'll probably have to live with that. I think next time I'd recommend probably very carefully just soap and water, I guess. I wish I had been a little more careful on that. I was trying to kind of get in more in the gears and kind of wash out the crud in the gears so much than getting to the wheels, the numbers. But you wind up getting it on the numbers. Otherwise, the mechanism is looking pretty good. You still see some little bits of hair that you couldn't quite eradicate with the carefully compressed air and the aforementioned solvent. Still a little bit in there, but it's a fraction of what it used to be, at least. And what's nice is everybody actually seems to work here. I think what I'll do is I'll start lubricating everybody, and of course got to put all these keycaps on, but I might be able to just get this guy lubed up and put it back together, and maybe it'll work nicely now.